Here's your Farm and Ranch Report from the Montana Ag Network.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's time for today's Farm and Ranch News. Today's report coming from the Electric City here in Great Falls, Montana, downtown, in fact, at the Civic Center, as cattle producers and sheep producers from across the nation have gathered for the 51st annual National Public Lands Council meeting. And joining us from the Washington, D.C. office in the Public Lands Council Government Affairs position is Mr. Tanner Beamer, a Idaho native. Tanner, let's talk about this meeting, what the group is really focusing on this week here in Great Falls and the policy that they're going to set.
You bet. So like you said, this is the National Convention for the Public Lands Council. 13 western states, each of those have their own cattle and sheep affiliates that get together and form their own little state public lands councils. And we are here this week to vote on policy for the upcoming year. We're here to hear from folks at the federal agencies and members of Congress on what's going on in Capitol Hill and in the federal agencies that affect cattle producers on a daily basis.
Tanner, there's over 22,000 public lands ranchers out there across the West that utilize those public lands grazing allotments, part of that multi-use. Let's talk about multi-use and the role that grazing plays in keeping rangelands healthy.
Absolutely. You know, grazing is one of those integral multiple uses because it's one of those unique ones where it's compatible with all of the other ones. You know, whereas if you're mining or you're doing oil and gas extraction, it's a little bit more difficult to recreate in those areas. Grazing is conducive to all of that. It's also one of the most regenerative of the multiple uses. We heard from an FFA student this morning who did a prepared public speech, and he's going to compete at the National FFA Convention. He talked about regenerative grazing and all of the values that activity does, from soil aeration to carbon capture to spurring the life cycle of those native perennial grasses. I mean, it really is very important to the landscape of the West.
Tanner, stay with us, and for our friends at home, we'll be back from the Public Lands Council meeting right here in Great Falls after these messages.